Hi everyone, welcome to Woolen Spinning. My name is Rachel and it is Saturday, April 10th, 2021. Welcome to this place. I hope that this finds you well. I hope that you're doing really well. We are in the midst of more restrictions and lockdowns here, so people have been asked to stay at home, so we're just having a quiet weekend. And my mom is actually getting her vaccination today, which is wonderful. So small steps forward. I can be found pretty much everywhere as well for pearls, so Instagram and Ravelry, although I don't use Instagram a ton. I tend to be more present on the Slack channel, which is part of Patreon. So, and then of course, you can comment here on YouTube and you can interact with us in the Ravelry channel, in the Ravelry group, and you can use the hashtag Woolen Spinning on Instagram if you want to participate in that community as well. I hope everybody's doing really super well. The chat is moving very quickly. So we've got tons of familiar faces. It's so good to see you all. Welcome to anybody who's new, who's just checking out, who's just become a patron in the last week or so, and is just joining us for the first time in the live stream. It's really good to have you here, and thank you so much for joining us. If you are a returning viewer to the show, thank you so much for returning and for continuing to watch. I really appreciate you watching and being here. And to new viewers, thank you for checking out the show and for seeing what goes on here and what we do here. It's a pleasure to have you and to host you here. To those who are patrons of the show, thank you so much for your ongoing support. It keeps the lights on here. It keeps the live stream going each week. It keeps all of the content going that I get to make for all of you each month. And if you have any questions about any of it, please don't hesitate to reach out to me directly. It's easier to message me directly than to put something in Ravelry in the threads or on the Slack channel in threads. Try to message me directly and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. If you message me on Instagram, I just won't get back to you right away because I don't check it every day. It's kind of one of those love-hate relationship things. And I appreciate your understanding. I would way rather spend time on the Slack channel or here with you guys. So in today's show, I actually have some new things to tell you about, finally. I felt like for a long time I got really bogged down with the shifty and got bogged down with really big spins that I couldn't really talk about on the show. And I'm starting to come out from under all of that. So it's a nice feeling. It's nice to sort of feel like I'm able to work on some new things and able to do some new things. So today we're going to talk about, well, a couple of new cast-ons, and I have a one spin that's an old spin, but I'm really trying to push through to get it done. And I've got several bobbins full, and I'm ready to ply, and a new spin that I wanted to share with you guys. So maybe we'll start there. Before we run the intro credits and whatnot, I wanted to show you I finished my gotland. So this is my gotland. My two turtles are done, and this is the second 50 grams of thread box, which was a colorway from Spunky Eclectic from December of 2020 from her fiber club. And all I need to do now is ply these together. So I've already done the first 50 grams. This is the second 50 grams. And this is actually for a big sweater spindle spin that I'm working on. So I'm really, really hoping to get those plied up maybe today if I get a chance to sit down and get that yarn washed and finished, and then I can start on this solid gray, which will be the background to the colorwork yoke. So this will be the colorwork yoke, and then the background will be the solid gray gotland. So this is actually gotland fiber, and it was dyed by Amy. Let me see if I can get the camera to focus. The light is it is so bright outside that I had to be really careful with how much light we had on the podcast, because otherwise we're going to end up with just a ton of light and it'll just blow everything out. So anyways, I'm going to get that plied up and get that all done, and then I'll be able to start on the gray part of the sweater, which I'm actually really looking forward to, because it'll be nice to kind of be moving on to the next sort of section of the project, because if I'm not going to spin a ton of the gray Gotland. I'm going to do enough that I can ply and do a 2-ply, and then I'm actually going to do a swatch and sample it and see what I think before I go any further. The other thing that I finished, and let me just flip around. Oh, Mars, thank you. You're so funny. You're so sweet. She said I have the best bangs. My fringe. I do it myself, so that's saying something. One of the things that has come up again and again and again in our community has been this idea. It's actually Dorothy, who I'm not sure if she's here today. I was searching the chat for her, but she might be watching this later. I see Jenny, and I see, I don't know if Eve is here yet. Anyways, in virtual spinning, and I'm not sure if Pat is here, we've been talking a lot about, well, not a lot, but, well, yeah, we've been talking about it quite a bit, about spinning for crewel work and needlepoint and needlework and embroidery, and Dorothy's been really interested in Elizabethan embroidery recently. So this is something I have wanted to do like since I was a teenager, and I never have. I did cross stitch all through high school. Anyhow, I took the plunge, and I wanted to first get a kit and work from a kit, and then my plan is to start to recreate these yarns. Sorry for the crinkling. Start to recreate these yarns so that I can spin and make them myself. So I ended up ordering this from the UK, and it's from Airman Tapestry, and these are all of the yarns that you get for the needlepoint work. And then this is this is Kay Facet's design, and this is his peonies. Pink Chinese peonies. So that's the pattern, and that's obviously the pixelated pattern, and then this is the cloth. So the heavy, it's not Aida cloth per se for needlepoint, it's thicker, it's more like a plastic. But this is what I've ordered, and my plan, and I know that there are others in the community that are looking at some of this stuff as well and wanting to do some of this spinning for some of this stuff. The reason why I wanted to start with a kit, my Auntie Vaughn, who is the reason for all of this and the reason that all of this got started in the first place, she did all of this, and we've got quite a number of her needle points at my parents' house. And she worked only from kits, but my long-term plan is actually to, after learning what I can from this kit, I actually am hoping to sort of make my own and take photographs that I've taken, pixelate them, and print patterns that way. Even if I have to get them like printed at like, you can't do them on like a home printer. You need something with all the different colors, and get them printed at somewhere like Staples or like a print house or something where you can get all the different colors, and you just superimpose graph paper over top, and then you can, it's kind of counted cross stitch, except that you're doing needlepoint. So that's like my long-term plan. These are things that I've been thinking about for years and years and years, and I just thought, you know what, I'm gonna start working on some of this stuff in the background, because I don't necessarily want tons more sweaters, and I kind of want some smaller portable projects that I can work on when we're traveling in the summer. So that's kind of my plan. Yeah, it's totally different, Martha. Something I just have been sort of pushing the envelope a little bit and thinking about some different things. Oh, that's fantastic, Diane. So Charlotte, who's part of our community, Carlotta, and her mom taught needlepoint for years, and she used to teach as well. Oh, that's so cool, Diane. Okay, we need to talk about making patterns. Like, how do you make your own? The other thing I finished before we run the intro credits is I actually pulled these off of my Louette spring. So these were like really big samples, mostly just to get used to the spring. And I also wanted to play with the Huck lace structure. So I'm calling these my summer bouquet flowers. what did I call them? Spring bouquet. My spring bouquet towels. The Huck lace came out really interesting. And of course you can see that you've got quite a bit of draw in compared to the, this will get cut off. This was the header to spread your warp. So I was just playing with tension and I cut off the rest of it. There was a whole bunch down here that was like the beginning of the towels, but you can see there's quite a bit of draw in when you start the Huck, and these haven't been ironed at all, so they haven't been sort of, you know, pressed or anything like that. They've just been cut to get the fringe and everything off. So this was just play. So this is going to get cut off, and then this will fold, and then this part will fold up to become the hem. So they'll look like this when they're done. Obviously they'll get a really good pressing. But the Huck lace, I did the first one because I was just playing with the lace structure, so I wasn't really too worried about whether or not I could actually have like a usable towel at the end. I think this will still be really kind of interesting to use because it's got a little bit of texture to it from the Huck lace, because it's very three-dimensional. Like, remember, weaving creates a three-dimensional cloth, right? Because you've got the over-under. But I was just playing with it and really trying to understand it, and I found that, like, you know, just getting into the rhythm of it and just treadling for it and making sure my tie-up was correct, because I had to change a couple of my threads at the beginning. They were tied up wrong, and I had to sort of re-tie up a couple things, make some fake heddles, and I still have a big mistake actually in here. I'm not sure if I can find it. Yes. So I did actually make a mistake in my threading right here. So this row here, you can see how the weft floats go over 4 threads. I'll bring it up closer for you. It goes over 4 threads instead of 2 threads. You see how it goes over those 2 colors? I messed up the threading. So for the entire project, the threading is wrong for that section. And I didn't catch it until I was into the 3rd or 4th towel. So it's amazing how when you look at the towel, or like when you have stuff on your loom, you think that you've got it and you think you're okay. And then you sort of realize after the fact that you're looking at it from the top down, and sometimes the light and everything, you just can't see some of those mistakes. So it's really good for me to sort of see what that threading error looked like in the Huck lace, so that I can see it in the future. Because these are for me. I'm not giving these away just because they were samples. So this was the first one, just playing with the Huck lace structure and understanding the structure. And then the second one was this one. And actually, I really like this one. And I think my sister-in-law would actually really like it as well. Let me just fold it so I can show you guys. So this one was woven, the entire thing was woven with peach for the weft. And here's the hem again. So this will be hemmed up just like that. So they'll look like that when they're done. And then I did this sort of tangerine red orange kind of color. I just did a section of Huck. And after I finished this towel, I was actually really bummed that I hadn't put on a longer warp, because I could have made a whole bunch of these, because I think this is so effective. Isn't that lovely? So it's got that lovely interest, and then the rest of the towel just went like that. It was so fast to weave. So that was the second one. And then the third one, I was playing with the colors. So this one was kind of just playing. I knew I was getting to the end of the warp. And so this one I actually did gingham style. And so they're just color blocks, which actually I kind of wished that I had done the whole towel that way. But I did throw in some dark brown Huck just to see what the dark brown would look like, bordered by the green. So this will get folded up. The hem is here, so that will get folded up and hemmed. I might even fold it up down here, hem it down there. We'll see. But I really like this part of the towel. I thought this was awesome. Getting rid of the sort of the Huck for a minute and just looking at the gingham, I thought that was really cool. Though I could have done a whole warp just like this, because I pulled out all of my shuttles, as many as I could. And I put as many of the colors in, because I only had, in the warp, I was using 2/8 cotton, yes. There was only, I think there was 5 colors in the warp, maybe 7. There was white, pink, light pink, orange, light orange, really light orange. And then I did one stripe of green for a zinger, just for interest. So that's the green there. So I think I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 colors. Yeah, those are the colors there. Plus the one thing of green. So anyhow, I really, really like this one. That one turned out really well, except for this part. Which I could cut off. It's not a big deal. These are just for me. But I really liked the idea of combining different structures, playing with the lace. Yeah, and this one turned out the best. For sure. That one was really effective. So lots of chances to play, and a really great opportunity to get to be good friends with my new loom, and just having that opportunity to play and get used to it, because it does take time for sure. I'm gonna roll the credits, because actually I need to close the blinds, because as I predicted, the sun is streaming in and it's beautiful. How many tea towels do you have now? You know what? That's so funny, Eve. I've kind of lost track. I think for me, like the ones that I've kept, I probably have about a dozen, but I've actually gifted quite a few away. Like I've given, a couple to my best friend, and I've given a couple to the, teachers, and, my sister-in-law has a whole bunch now, and I've given a couple to my mother-in-law, and my mom has a bunch, and, I've kind of just distributed them, because they're not good enough yet to sell them. I don't know if I'll ever really do that anyhow. But it's just really fun to play and to learn these different weave structures. And my long-term plan is to make some big pieces of fabric and cloth. Like that's kind of my long-term plan. So I'm just kind of time, space, all the things is kind of our issues right now. So let's run the credits and we'll get into the spinning. So I'll see you guys on the other side. So I think what we'll do, what yarn will you use, wool or cotton or something else? I only do embroidery with cotton. Barbara, I think you're asking about the needlepoint. So I always used to use cotton for my cross stitch, and I did a little bit of embroidery, and I always used cotton as well. But my plan is to do wool needlepoint. That's kind of my plan. And I'd really, really like to do, Dorothy and I were talking about this earlier in the week. So I'd really like to spin the wool, do a whole bunch. So as much as I need for a project, and then dye it all in all the different colors, and then use it. So we're talking about like some big projects, long-term projects. But that's like my long-term plan. So let's talk about my CVM spin. I'm only going to talk about it really super quickly. This is one of my Magicraft bobbins. It is absolutely full of this fiber. This is being spun long draw. I'm just like literally putting it as much, like tons of twist, and just drawing out sort of English style, and then winding it onto the bobbins, and then drawing it out and repeat. So I've actually been spinning this on my Kromsky Minstrel, and I've got 2 very full bobbins over there, but the third bobbin was actually in use. So I ended up spinning the third bobbin on my Magicraft Susie, which was totally fine because I had my control card. I've spun so much of this fiber that I just know what I'm looking for in my plyback test. And this is what the fiber looks like in the pin drafted rovings. So this was a fleece that my friend Greta and I bought We bought 2 together, and then we asked Megan in our community to ship them up to Kingdom Fleece and Fiberworks to the mill there. Excuse me, sorry, with my friend Liz, and she processed both of the fleeces separately into pin drafted rovings for us, and then shipped half of it to me and half of it to, well, she shipped all of it to me and then I passed it off to Greta. So it worked out really super well. Just these beautiful, soft, plump, airy rovings, and then I've been spinning it into a 3-ply. And what I've actually been creating with it is, this was my knitted swatch. So this is a 3-ply. This is CVM, and this is actually 3 different needle sizes. So it goes from 4mm to 4.5mm to 5mm, I think. Was that what I did? Let's see. The pearl bumps here are the needle sizes in US sizing. So if there's 4 bumps, then that's one of the sizes. If it's 5 bumps, that's one of the sizes. Yeah, so it goes from 4.5mm to 5mm. So US size 5, 6, and 7. So you can see how the swatch kind of grew as I went up in needle sizes, and you can see how the fabric started to change, because the US size 5, you can see how there's these yeah, it's not as tight, it's not as dense. And then you can see down at the 4mm, or the US size 5, much denser, much structurally a little bit more elastic, a little bit denser, a little bit thick, not thicker, that's the wrong word that I'm looking for. More, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a good word. I need Becca and her vocabulary. She always has like the right word. Anyways, the 4.5mm needles was the right size for the pattern that I'm knitting for, which I can't talk about just yet. I'm sorry, you guys. That's just really not fair. But it has a really nice feel, the middle of the swatch, and it's kind of a nice bridge between the 4 and the 5, because the 4 is quite elastic and quite forgiving. But it's firmer, it's more opaque, it's denser, it's tighter. You guys are awesome. It's more sturdy. You got it. All of those words. Exactly. Whereas this one's looser, it's not as dense, it's a little bit more airy, it's got a little bit more, it'll have a little bit more drape, even though CVM doesn't have a lot of drape. And so the 4.5mm was right in the middle, and it just so happened that that was the one that I got gauge, which was perfect. So that project is up and away, but I do need more yardage. So I thought that I had spun quite a bit of it during Tour de Fleece back in July, and I was feeling quite proud of myself and looking forward to using the rest of the fiber for a different project for my Natural Shades Along, for my Grey Roop sweater. But I actually need more 3-ply. So I'll ply this all up, see what I've got for yardage, see how much further I can get in the project without spinning too much more. And then we'll go from there. I'm gonna leave that like that because we need that for Fennel. So the other project that I have been working on, and this was totally and completely because of Eve, is a Beaumont Hakunya. I can never say this, Haikoya. It's a Camelid spin. So this is it here. It's 49% Beaumont, 51% Hakuya. Is that how you say it? Can somebody type out the phonetic? You guys are so helpful. You're always so great to me. This is a pin drafted roving. It's really, really interesting. As you watch me spin, I'll see if I can show you. I'll use my hair as the background. So just take, just bear with me for a second here. So if you look at my hair, look at all of these fuzzies that you've got here. Like, I'll even see if I can zoom in a little bit. You've got all these fuzzies here and all these, and you can see it kind of against the backdrop of my sweater, even the darkness. Those are all sort of intermediate hairs from the Camelid, which is kind of interesting because everybody's telling me a different way to say it. Wakaya, is that how you say it? Wakaya. So you've got these like intermediate hairs from the Camelid fibers, and then you've got the Beaumont mixed in, and it's just an absolutely beautifully white white fiber. And Eve was having some troubles spinning it. And so we decided to spin it together and just sort of see if we could get going together. She's been spinning a ton of it. She's doing a sweater spin. And it's just a really fascinating fiber because there's those intermediate hairs from the Camelid, and then there's the softness of the Camelid and the Beaumont. I mean, we're just talking about like this just very, very fine fiber. And okay, this is really helpful, Kelly. Thank you so much. So why Kaya? That's how my Spanish friends say it. So that's really helpful. Wakaya. Why Kaya? Once I get something, I'm fine. It's just the initial, like the mouth work of wrapping my mouth around it. I once had this lovely man from Montreal teach me we were stuck in France on a train. The train had shut down, blah, blah, blah. It was broken and we got stranded and there was a big storm and, and me and my cousin got stranded with this gentleman from Montreal. And he thought it was hilarious trying to teach us Anglophones how to say a bunch of the French words, like the different cities and the different towns and stuff. And my cousin couldn't get it at all, like none of the words she could get. But with practice, I got all of them. And he actually said I had a really good ear. It's just the actual practicing of it that I have to just slow down, look at the word, hear how somebody else is saying it. I can't learn it by reading it. I need somebody to say it to me, and then I can practice repeating it back. So the fineness of this fiber is really interesting, but because it's pin drafted roving and it's carded, when I first sat down to start spinning it, I started spinning it continuous back because I always start with my default because then you can go from there. And you can change, and immediately I found myself wanting to go more to a long draw. And you can see here on the Lendrum, I've got it going quite quickly, and you can see that like it's just drawing out so evenly and so quickly, and it just seems to take the twist really evenly and quickly, and you can just draw back and wind on and draw back and wind on. And I've had a lot of fun playing with it. Eve had commented to me that there was quite a lot of neps in it and that it seemed like there were clumps that would draft forward every so often, and that she was having to go back and double draft. And I definitely found that was the same. There are some neps in it for sure. And when I go to knit with it, I'll probably have to pull some stuff out as I'm knitting with it, because the neps seem to actually kind of sit on the surface. You can see them there on my thigh. But on the other hand, I haven't been going back and double drafting necessarily because I've been getting such even yarn. Like, look at that plyback test, right? So I don't want to micromanage the fiber by, trying to change the prep or trying to spin it in a different way when it's just so easy to spin. And this is the three ply plyback test. And you can see that it's just spinning up to a beautiful, I think it's going to end up being somewhere between 12 and 14 wraps per inch. I think it'll knit up really nicely as a sport weight. So that's a new spin. That's roughly 8 ounces of fiber. I'm not sure what I'll get for yardage if I 3-ply it, but if I 2-ply it, it'll end up being so fine that I won't have, like, it'll just be too much for a shawl, but it'll not be enough for a sweater. So I'll see what I have for bobbins when I'm done and see what I want to do for plying. That's a really interesting question, Mars. Does your treadle speed naturally change as you wind on? I don't find that it does when I'm doing long draw, because I find when I'm doing long draw, I kind of get into this rhythm and my treadling stays relatively consistent. I do find, however, on the Lendrum, I find that I did that because the camera wasn't focusing on my hands. It was focused on the drive wheel. I do find, though, when I'm spinning on the Lendrum, the natural momentum of the big drive wheel, I get going so much quicker than I do on some of my castle style wheels, particularly on the Minstrel and the Lendrum DT, that I do find with the Saxony, just the sheer weight and size, the momentum is quite a bit bigger. Because when I first got it, I sort of found myself thinking, I wonder if 17:1 is going to be a high enough ratio. You know, maybe I should have held out for a Shacked Reeves or for something else. But now that I've been spinning on it for a while, almost a year, just the sheer momentum of the drive wheel just completely compensates for that. So, yeah. What wraps per inch singles are you getting? Oh, good question, Eve. I think my singles are about 28 wraps per inch. So I might try, I'm not very far in, so I might try to spin a little bit finer so that I get a slightly finer 3-ply. I'll see how that goes. Yeah, thank you. That's very generous of you. Oh, that sounds really hard, Leanne. So she's half deaf and using lip reading. Yeah, that's really super hard. The wraps per inch tool that I used in the bow, what's the highest that it measures? I think it measures 45 wraps. I think that's the highest that it goes. I personally haven't found that I've needed anything higher, but I don't tend to spin singles that are 60 wraps per inch. And I feel like if I'm spinning that fine, I probably can gauge based on that 45 wraps per inch. I can probably gauge how much finer I'm spinning just because it is so much thinner. I don't go much below about 36. So that's different for everybody for sure. And depends on what you want to spin for. Like even with the cruel wool that I was showing you, you know, that's still a fine sport weight. It's a heavy fingering light sport. So even then I wouldn't be spinning that much finer. I just don't know if it's a 3-ply or a 4-ply. So I have to deconstruct it a little bit. The momentum will be noticeable. Yeah, this solid drive wheel, exactly, Rebecca. Felt differently on my Shacked with a lighter big wheel. Yeah, good point, Becca. Because the Saxony is solid walnut. It's solid wood, so it's there's definitely that heaviness, whereas the flat iron has the 3D printed wheel, so it's a little bit lighter. Yeah, the pin drafter roving, it really is a dream. It's so true. Okay, let's move on to some of my knits. So I cast on 2 new things this week, and I was actually really excited about them. It was really a pleasure to work on something new, to be honest with you. So this is my Fennel. So this is Orlaine Souche's photograph of the sweater so that you guys could get a sense of what it looks like. And this is where mine's at. And I actually wore my Albini today sort of in honor of this knit because I knit her Albini. And for those who haven't seen this sweater, I'll just go back a bit and model for just a sec. This sweater is very similar in the sense that it's a top-down raglan. This one has pockets and it's got a square bottom. So you cast off and do your ribbing and cast off, and then you sew down your pockets afterward. And then the back has a lovely break here, and it's just knit straight down. So it's sort of got this really lovely positive ease. Sorry, I have to move this way. Positive ease. It's just got a really lovely feel. I wear it all the time. It's actually pilling. And so I just love her patterns. I like the little things in her patterns, like, you know, like the rib, for example, like you do a braid before you do the rib on this sweater, and it's just those little finishing touches. It's kind of like Gentle Morning. So when I swatched for this yarn, this is my Disdero Ranch, that massive bat that I've been working on. I've been checking my yardage, and the yardage is actually way better than I thought that it was. So for my first skein that I wound, I actually had a full 260 yards. And I had said to you guys I wasn't sure that I would have enough, but my grist has ended up being 1,100 yards per pound, and I have just shy of a pound of yarn spun. So I have about 1,000 yards of yarn. So it's more than enough for my size for this sweater. And my gauge swatch was, I had done it as the Gentle Morning because my plan was to knit the Gentle Morning for my mom out of this yarn, but the patterning got completely lost. See if the camera will focus on this. Might not like it because there's nothing to focus on. There we go. You see how like you can't see the rib. You can't see the rib in there. Like the rib you can see the ribbing, but you lose the texture of the broken rib. And so I had said to you guys that I was going to knit the sweater for my mom in a different yarn and a different color because she only wears black. But I had the right gauge for fennel. So this was knit on 4mm needles, which is a US size 5. Is that right, you guys? A US size 5. And I got gauge for this. So I cast on, and I decided to show you a photo of the cast on versus trying to show you my knitting, mostly because it doesn't really look like anything when it's just laying out on the needles, but if you see it on the dress form, then you can actually see it. So it actually starts off with a saddle shoulder. So that's been really neat because I haven't done a saddle shoulder for years. And the one sweater that I did that was a saddle, I ripped it out. I told you guys the camera would blow out. It's so bright. I'm loving it. It was so gray. So I did so that you cast on as you would for a top-down sweater, and then you work this saddle, and then you go into the yoke. So it'll be kind of interesting because the measurements on the pattern actually, the depth of the yoke is quite a bit deeper than what I need for my size because my yoke isn't actually very long. And I found with this one, with Albini, I've got about 2 inches of positive ease in here that I could have taken out. And at first, when I first tried it on, when I was first finished with it, I was actually really bummed because I felt like the yoke was too deep and I felt like I had bat wings. But it's actually been really great because I can wear long sleeve t-shirts underneath this sweater. And it's become my go-to because it does have that positive ease. So we'll see how this goes and how the saddle works out and how the yoke goes because it's kind of a different construction. The other thing that I will say is I can only work on about, I have about 5 rows per inch. So now I'm talking about row gauge, not stitch gauge. So the rows, so how many rows you get per inch. And I'm finding I can really only knit about 5 rows before I have to move on to something else, which is why I have a second cast on. And it's because this yarn is so stiff. And I was really nervous about that when I first started knitting because I was like, oh no, here we go. My wrist isn't going to be able to do it. And I thought maybe it's just too dense. Maybe it needs to be knit less densely, maybe 4mm. I was really like second guessing myself. But the thing is, this swatch loosened up, and once it was washed, it was so lovely, and it holds its shape beautifully. I thought if it's not knit to the right gauge, you'll find that your swatches and your knitted fabric, it just loses its shape, or it does the opposite and it's too dense and it is too firm. And this is just perfect, but it softens so much. So even though I've washed and finished the yarn, it'll soften and settle just like Romney does because it's sort of more of a longer wool in the knitted fabric. So it'll be a great sweater, but it's going to take time to actually knit it. I'm not going to be able to just bang it out because my wrist won't be able to handle it. It's just a little bit too toothy. So that's kind of too bad because I'm actually really excited about it. Romney is such a lovely color. Thank you, Lindsay. I'm eyeing it. A pile of gray hands fun. Awesome. Yes, definitely time to cast on a sweater. Thank you for clarifying the needle sizes, Mars. That's really super helpful. It was actually a really long time. So when I learned how to knit, there was no Ravelry. There was no digital stuff. None of this existed. And it's taken me a while to sort of try, remember to translate the needle sizes because I never did, because there was no, there wasn't social media, there wasn't, the podcast, we only talked about spinning, and now that we talk more and more, we talk more and more about knitting, we talk more and more about spinning, weaving, we talk, we sort of talk about lots of different things. I have found that more and more I need to remember to say the US sizes because there's a lot of our American friends who don't know the millimeters. So it's been kind of one of those funny things because technically Canada is metric. But so many of us sew in inches. I do a lot of the weaving stuff in inches. Yeah, so it's all of that. This is a commercial sweater that I've cast on. So I just we'll go back to, so that was Fennell. Let's have a look at Florence. So this has been in my queue, if you will, for since it was published. And actually I was trying to look up when it was published, and then I got and then I realized what time it was, and it was time to talk to you guys. So I'm actually not sure when this was published. Oh, June of 2020. As soon as this pattern came out, I was like, I have to knit that. And it's not anything that I normally would knit. It's not my look. It's not my style. But I just, anything that Sari puts out, I just love. I think she is just wonderful. I love her YouTube channel. I think she is just the cutest. So this is the beginning of the Florence. My gauge is wrong. My gauge is actually quite a bit bigger. So I'm holding Drops Lace double. So this is from my local yarn shop. It was actually on sale. I only needed 4 balls of it, and it's actually 70-30 alpaca and lace, or sorry, alpaca and mulberry silk. So 70% alpaca, 30% mulberry silk. And it knit up really beautifully. And I swatched this immediately back in June of 2020, and I never did anything about it. I think with everything that was going on last year and being at home and homeschooling, and I had so many projects that I was so super excited about, this just kept getting pushed to the backbone, and I pull it to the back burner, and I would keep pulling it out, and I put it away, and I pull it out, and I put it away. And a lot of it, does this ever happen to you guys? I had the plans for this project. I had the pattern printed out. I had the chart. I had the swatch. I had washed it. I had measured it. I knew exactly what I was doing. But I had to do some math to figure out, based on my gauge, what I needed to change in the pattern to actually make sure that it fit. Like, I knew that I had to cast on a smaller size to get the right size because my gauge is so much bigger. And I just felt like there was this wall and this mental block where it was just too much. I just couldn't get my head around or wrap my head around the math to actually get it cast on. Like, it just felt so overwhelming. And then you look at the pattern and it wants you to cast on however many stitches, you know, 180 or 160 or whatever it was. And it was just like too many stitches, you know, and like I cast on like 200 stitches all the time, but for whatever reason, this pattern, this project, I was like, nope, it's too much. Brain overload. So I did spend some time last weekend on Easter Sunday, actually. I sat in the morning while we were watching church, because of course it's all virtual right now. I sat down, and unfortunately I'm in the middle of a row. I'm really sorry. And I cast on. So I cast on for the, I think I ended up needing to cast on size 1 for a size 2. Or did I cast on a size 2 for a size 3? Either or, it doesn't matter. So that's what I'm doing. And that lace always looks so ugly before it's washed and blocked, right? And I'm actually pretty far. I've done 2 of my buttonholes already. It's a nice fabric. It's going to be really drapey. I'm not going to knit this really super long. You know how I always lengthen everything? I'm going to leave this actually per the pattern, which I think is, if my memory serves, I think I actually have it right here. This is my new thing. I print patterns so that it's like a little book. When I have to print patterns. Usually it's only when I have a pattern like this that is includes like charts and whatnot. And I do use Knit Companion almost exclusively now. I use that all the time. If you guys haven't seen that, it is brilliant. We will talk about that over the next coming weeks, because it's been really, really, really helpful, especially when I'm at work and I don't want to have a whole bunch of stuff to drag around. So this is the schematic, and the length here is 30 centimeters or 11.75 inches. And I think that I'm going to probably stick with that. I'll try it on and see what I think. I might add like an inch, but I think this is kind of like I think for the look and for the pattern and whatnot, I think you don't need it to be much longer. And it's totally different, something that I don't normally make. And I'm really excited about it. It's been really nice to work on something different, you know? So that is that project. Have you guys been working on anything that's kind of different for you, or stuff that's sort of out of the ordinary? You know, I'm just curious, like, you know, what's been really like gearing you up recently? You know, like, I really felt like I've been needing a change of pace. Does that make sense? Like, you know, wanting to do the needlepoint and, you know, realizing that goal, and working on some knits that are a little bit different and not the same. Also, stash busting, that's a thing. Wanting to get through some of that stuff. Yeah. So that is that project. I'm really excited about it. I knit a bunny yesterday. Leanne, you just crack me up. So funny. My brain tells me nope pretty often for little knitting calculations. That's awesome, Jose. College physics teacher. Awesome. Claudia's knitting brioche right now. My change of pace has been sewing, making camisoles for myself out of thrifted enormous t-shirts. That's very cool. Lots of baby knitting. Of course, Leanne, of course. Because you're due in like June, I think, right? I'm stuck in a nothing's working slog. Oh, Diane, I just came out of one of those. That the struggle is real. The struggle is real. All right, let's find, what are we doing next? All right, so for April, tell us what your favorite mitten pattern is. So please, you can comment in the episode thread on Ravelry if you are a Ravelry user. And if you are not a Ravelry user, you can comment here on YouTube. Just tell us what your favorite mitten pattern is. And tell us, and you can share that in the episode thread on Ravelry or here on YouTube. Don't comment in the live chat. You want to comment on Ravelry so that I can go back and count them later. And what we're actually going to be giving away. So Maria got back to me about which one she wanted. So we're doing kind of a dual giveaway right now. So for March, we gave away one of the Lava Love colorways. And then for April, we were going to do the other one. So Maria has chosen, just let me make sure I'm not telling Porky Pie lies. I'm positive that she chose the Targhee. Yes, she chose Targhee. So she is going to get the Targhee. So for April, we'll be giving away the Panda. So this is the Lava Love colorway on Panda. So whoever, so tell us about your favorite mitten pattern to honor the Hive mitts that I made last week. And you guys can let me know what your favorite mitten pattern is in the comments on YouTube or in the episode thread in Ravelry. Okay, let's talk about Breed and Color Studies. So I'm just going to do a really quick refresher of Breed and Color Study because I have the photos here. So for Breed and Color Study, this runs until the end of June, and this fiber is no longer available, but Katrina does have this colorway, the Always Believe colorway. So not the Shetland, but the colorway. She actually is going to, she's introduced it as part of her, what's that word? Like her inventory, like it's part of her colorways now. So when you go into the braids in her shop on Crafty Jacks, if you click on any of them, I think, so you can look at her tweed top, you can look at the plain BFL, you can look at anything. The last colorway that's pictured there is the Always Believe. So it's on all the different bases now. So we're doing Shetland, we're doing it up until the end of June, but if you really wanted to participate with the colorway and you really felt like you hadn't been able to do that, then you can participate like from the colorway perspective. So you can have a look. I put the link in the live chat for you guys. So these are our colors that we're working with. So when we do our breeding color study, we're looking at not just the fiber, because we can't do raw fleece. Like we can't be shipping fleeces around the world. So we look at them from sort of, you know, what is this fiber like after it's been processed? You know, so from January until the end of June, we look at comb top, and then from July through to the end of December, we look at carded prep. So, you know, in sort of the interest of being able to ship worldwide and Katrina being able to create all of this for us, we have to sort of be realistic about what we can create. So we had white this time round, we had light gray, and we had moirette. So people have been playing around a ton, which is amazing. And Bridget shared her skeins. So this is from Bridget. Here are my finished skeins. I spun each end to end long draw on my Ashford e-spinner. She plied on the e-spinner as well. Her plan is to weave with them, but she is still thinking about that. Her last attempt to weave with hand-spun woolen was a fail, but these skeins are sturdier and more consistent. I am a bit stuck on how to handle the two darker skeins, as there doesn't seem to be much difference in their values. I may use each one as a separate warp and weave three individual fabrics in plain weave and use a lighter weight weft so that the warp dominates. I am looking forward to getting started. This is super exciting, Bridget. I love these skeins. So of the three colorways, my absolute most favorite one was the moirette. So that's the one that's closest to us here. And it's got that gorgeous black, black, black because of the moirette being so dark to begin with. And it's been interesting because as I've watched these being spun up and as I've watched them, people using them, more and more, I actually find it hard to choose which one I like the best. Like it's kind of interesting how my taste, if you will, is starting to change and shift from, yep, this one's my favorite, I love it the most. It's still the one that I like the most, but I'm finding it harder and harder to choose which one I like the most, like when I see them finished. I love your mug too, Bridget. That's just awesome. Your sheepy mug. I wonder if that's a little Shetland. Everybody's saying it's just lovely, beautiful. Oh my goodness. Kathy's crocheting blankets for twin grandbabies coming soon. It's wonderful. Maggie's having project paralysis with her breeding color study. It feels like too many decisions, so I keep setting it aside until I have the brain space or an idea. Maggie, I actually felt the same way about our last study. I actually just could not go forward with it. I was really, really struggling. And I finally, because of what I do for you guys and all the stuff that I create and whatnot, I actually found that I had to just finally just go do something. But the nice thing is you can sort of wait until you have some inspiration strike. And in that way, I think that's actually really nice to have that space. I know Becca, and she's here today. She often will put them out somewhere where she can see them. Kay Fassett talks about this a lot when he does talks, where he'll say, put something out somewhere where you have to see it every day. And then that process of seeing it and processing it, you'll eventually have inspiration will hit. And he also recommends not putting something on a white background because white is very stark. And he recommends putting something on a camel background or a wood background, something a little bit more rustic, a little bit warmer, that's inviting, because it gives your brain the message that it's inviting you to create. Isn't that interesting? So I had the privilege, my mom and I, of seeing him speak when I was in first or second year university. He spoke in Burnaby. And my mom and I went together, and it was so inspiring. I still, to this day, think about some of the things that he said. This is from Jen, who's in the chat today. Jen, mine's on the dining room table there all day, still frozen. Leanne, you need weeks, my friend, weeks. When I am paralyzed like that, I wait for, like, often it'll take weeks, months. Becca says, yep, putting it on the dining room table usually sparks an idea or two after a few days. The other thing I really like to do is putting it on the dining room table, but I put it in a vase to protect it. So because I find if I take it out of the plastic, for whatever reason, it's just more inviting, and I touch it and I feel it, and I look at it when I walk by it, and I find that kind of gets me going. So this is from Jen. So this is our 51 yarns spin along. This is group B. They are in their second year. They're going to be wrapping up come December of this year. She has been working on her down wools, so she's a little bit behind, she said, in her study. She spun some Suffolk, but then she also did some low twist singles. So she says, okay, this may be cheating a bit because the form of this skein is now a 2-ply, but spun as a test to see if I could replicate the super thick roving style yarns now so popular. She spun very low twist singles. The fleece is from a local mill. It had some VM. It was a Cormo pin drafted. Now the adventure was spinning, which my friend did with me feeding her the roving on a country spinner to get the needed big roving style. We lightly felted the single to hold it together, and this shows the yarn and the quote test swatch, which is that, very wide. As I recall, the fleece was also a Cormo, likely from the same mill. Isn't that awesome? Isn't that so cool? And then she has, for her down wool, I kind of skipped that. Her spin was Suffolk. It was very enjoyable. She likes working with the down breeds. It can be tricky as the bounce and stretch means that sometimes she thinks she is keeping the single even, and then when not under tension and once plied, she sees the variation. That is so true, Jen. I actually, when I had read that in the Ravelry group, I actually found myself sort of thinking, yeah, that's what it is. That's why people struggle with the downs, is because you're drafting and you're under tension, and then you go to ply and you're like, why is my yarn not consistent? I thought I was being consistent. And it's because when they're under tension, they look consistent. And then as soon as that bounce and that sproing, and they bloom in the washing, and then they're not quite so consistent. So they definitely take practice for sure. They're still wonderful. That should not scare you away, but definitely something to think about. I have another unidentified down fleece that I spun over a year ago, but for the life of me, I cannot find the skein. The fun story with that was it came from a friend who got it from a local demo education program farm. Local demo education program farm. She left it in her garage and it became infested with moths. Out of morbid curiosity, I went ahead and cleaned it. Yucky smell, but it was a very good learning about what happens with such an infestation. The smell alone will now be a good cue. A very springy fleece. It was fun to spin, and I also dyed some of it and liked the chalky result. I know by the color red that some of the scraps, meaning what was left from the fiber prep, became part of this 3D art quilt. Isn't that cool? You guys are probably wondering why that was there. That's why. Yeah, that's the reason for that photo. Eve, your timing, Eve, is just phenomenal. What is the photo of the blue and red and blue figures? That's what they are. Yeah, she dyed some of it, and the red is, became part of the 3D art quilt. All right, this one is from Linnea. Good to see you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you guys next week. Get dinner on the table, Becca. I hope your family has a good dinner. I know it's tough. This time is a difficult time for people in the UK who are trying to get dinner on the table. I've sometimes thought about moving the podcast back to 12 noon on Fridays. I know that's when book club is, but we could shift that a little bit. Because then it would be 8 p.m. on a Friday evening, and we could gather on Friday evenings. Because I know a lot of people go out on Thursday nights and Saturday nights, but they don't necessarily go out on Friday nights. So, but then I also really enjoy this time here on Saturday morning. So I don't know what the answer is. You guys can let me know. This is also 51 yarns. This is Linnea's core spun. So she gave it a go. Her first sample, the white one, she made with a cotton core. After reading Sarah Anderson's description in the Spinner's Book of Yarn Designs, she suggests using a drop spindle as a tool to manage the core yarn and the twist that builds up while spinning. She tried spinning it from a ball of yarn, but she could not make that work. She had problems and thought it was a bit boring in the white, so she stripped down a full braid of hand-dyed rambouillet. She found a single she had spun earlier and wanted to use that as a core, and but it kept breaking, so she ended up Navajo plying or chain plying the core on a drop spindle and leaving the core on the spindle as she was spinning. After a while, she started getting the hang of it, and after realizing that she had more carded, and after realizing she had to use a more carded like fiber, so the core needed to be a little bit stickier, a little bit rougher. Spinning from a top caused problems as well, so now she just has to try again and not get as much twist into the finished yarn. Some of the twist did disappear in the finishing, but not quite enough, and she does find this spin very interesting, challenging in a good way, and fun to do when it starts working for you and you can see that it looks right. Your core spun, Linnea, after finishing, it's perfect. Like, remember, core spun does not balance. There's nothing for it to balance against unless you ply it. So like this to me is like a perfect core yarn. Yeah, there's maybe some curly cues and some little bits in there that are a little bit overspun, but honestly, it's not bad, especially for only your second try. So really well done. Linnea also shared with us, let me figure out where I am on the screen, her self-striping. So I love these colors. Oh my goodness, they are just beautiful. I have a Romney that I spun called Bluebird. Some of you might remember that colorway. It was a spunky eclectic colorway from like 2014 or 2015, and it was these colors, and it's still in my stash because I just love it so much. It's beautiful. So she was inspired by Holly's self-striping hat, and so she had to try. She had some gradient Rolegs from Crafty Jacks wanting to make a 3-ply yarn, and she divided the Rolegs into 3 piles, spinning to 3 bobbins. And her thoughts about the spin and the finished yarn did not match up. She knew it would go wrong with one ply, since one pile had 4 Rolegs and 2 piles had 3 Rolegs. And the luck of spinning to 3 bobbins, making a self-striping yarn, well, you know the story. I continued anyways. I learned a lot. I like the yarn, but it is not self-striping. It's beautiful though, Linnea. It's gorgeous. Regretting I did not do the same with the others. I have been dreading chain plying. When I did it for the first time a year or so ago, it went awfully wrong, and I have been pushing it from doing it. She is pleased with the yarn sample making, wanting to make more self-striping and chain plying in the future, realizing now that this is 51 yarns. It's really a perfect way to get you out of your comfort zone and challenge you and make you grow as a spinner. You nailed it, Linnea. Absolutely. Absolutely. This I'm sharing mostly just for funsies, for kind of a bit of a joke. This is from Megan. This is for our luxury fibers along. So this is our ongoing spin along all year. We're looking at luxury fibers. She ended up getting all of this cashmere. She talks about it in the Wool and Spinning Radio episode with her and I, where she went to, I think it was an estate sale, and she got like these like bags and bags and bags of cashmere. So she posted in the Slack channel, I'm still spinning cashmere. It has felt like forever. I think I've done around 15 ounces. Isn't that incredible? I think this is off of her Shacked Reeves. I'm pretty sure these bobbins are her Shacked Reeves bobbins. So I wanted to share that because wow, that is a lot of spinning. Look at how fine that is. Unbelievable. Beautiful. This is from Jenny. She's been making solid progress on her natural shades along sweater spin. The brown is 100% Romney, and her just completed cream is a Romney Icelandic 50/50. I was wondering, Jenny, if that is Long Way Homestead Romney Icelandic, like if you combine them, or if it's something you had in your stash, or something, was it roving, or like what was it? Because it's 50/50, so I wasn't sure if it was something that you had made on the drum carder. She doesn't have quite enough yardage yet, 350 yards of each color, so she might spin up some light gray next. Any sweater suggestions? It's a light worsted. She made worsted yarn, woohoo! So sweater suggestions for this light worsted. There was a couple that I had that I was going to ask you guys if you had any ideas too. But what I was going to say was, let me just find it here. So when you go into Ravelry to search patterns, if you're using Ravelry, I would encourage you to, when you have a light worsted in your hand spun, I would really encourage you to choose DK in your filter results for your search for patterns. Choose worsted, but also choose DK, because sometimes DK yarns knit up like light worsted, and sometimes in our hand spun we think that we've got this really super dense worsted yarn, and you go to swatch with it and it's actually a little bit lighter. So and you can get away with spinning with knitting, a DK. There was a sweater pattern that I was going to suggest, and it's Sari's new one. It's called Urban Adventure, and I just linked it in the show notes. Or sorry, not the show notes, in the live chat. It's called Urban Adventure. It is so super stinking cute. I just love it. So thank you, Jenny. Well done. Beautiful. This is from Florence. I think this is just beautiful. This is her Zero to Hero #sweater spin. Florence shares, this is the Great Gray Mountain of Romney has become 2,400 meters of yarn. This was the first spin on my new Ashford eSpinner 3, and she plied it on her Susie Pro. I am really, really pleased with this yarn. It is soft and drapey with a lovely sheen. It has a beautiful sheen. I just love that you call this the Great Gray Mountain of Romney, all in capitals. Capital G, capital M. Having the single wrapped on a card for the visual feedback that I have is what I have found works for me as a consistency check. So we talk about spinning control cards all the time, and Florence has found that that really works for her if she wraps the singles on a card, and then she can visually just have a look at it when she's spinning. Beautiful. Beautiful. The Great Gray Mountain of Romney. That should be like a thing, a place. This is from Iris. Remember we had shared her yarn on the podcast, so she had finished spinning for her Shifty, and this is her knitting. So Iris, Shifty is coming along nicely. She'd be even further if she didn't have a few other projects to work on at the same time. She'll probably end up using only 3 of her 4 contrast colors, so she had asked for feedback from us about which colors we would use if we were knitting it. And so the next one is the red pink, and the last one is the blue purple, and which she already used for the first blips in the yoke. Beautiful, Iris, beautiful. Gorgeous. You guys are so kind. Christine, this is my stasis sweater over the weekend. It took longer than I expected it to. Because it was COVID related, but I'm hoping to lose a few more pounds in weight, but in a more intentional way, as I know my weight's crept up over the last few years, and I had to do some rejigging of the upper yoke. Tip, it's a very nice sweater to knit, but read the project notes about the yoke before you start it. Best of all, it still fits even though I lost weight, about 7 pounds. Well done, Christine. Between casting on and casting off. This was the BFL Silk Blend yarn. The main color is dyed BFL, the purple. Spindle spun last summer and autumn. This was the yarn that we shared on the podcast, the light gray oatmeal that she was doing on her spindle, and she was going to be doing an entire spindle spun. So well done, Christine. It's just absolutely beautiful, and congratulations on your lifestyle stuff. I know it's hard. It's tricky, isn't it? And we've all been home, and the kitchen is right there, and we're all looking for a little bit of comfort. That's why we've got our spinning, right? And our knitting, rather than the fridge. It's hard. It's really hard. Vicky shares, I just love this. She shared this recently on the Slack channel, I think a day or 2 ago. I wanted to share a little something I've been working on for a while now. She dyed some roving in January. She purchased an Ashford Merino roving bundle and did a semi-fractal spin and plied them as 3 plies. So these are all of the yarns. Aren't those amazing? If you're on the Slack channel, there's a photo that she shared where they're actually like in a pyramid. I'm not sure if I put the photo in here or not. But all the yarns are in a pyramid, and it's just a gorgeous photo. I know this sounds really funny, but Vicky, you should print that and like frame it. It's a gorgeous photo. So she thought this was going to be a cowl, but as she plied, she thought maybe a shawl, 700 plus yards, maybe a sweater. She had many photo shoots with this yarn. She cast on for a love note, and 7 days later, it was a sweater. That was the original fiber. If I could go back, I would have alternated skeins when changing colors, making a bigger neckline. But overall, for my first hand-spun sweater, I'm really happy with it. And my boyfriend says this style of sweater is trendy right now, so I'm going to pretend it was knit this way on purpose. I just love that, Vicky. That's totally something I would say and do. I have way more notes on my Instagram feed, even though most people here are only seeing and reading it here. I feel silly writing the same thing out in 3 places because she also put it in the School of Sweet Georgia. So if you're in the School of Sweet Georgia, you may have seen this as well. But really, really well done, Vicky. Just absolutely beautiful. Mind blown, says Jose. The photos alone are to die for. This sweater came out beautifully, so gorgeous. You guys, you're so lovely. That's fantastic. Thank you for continuing to share, and thank you for continuing to write about your projects and to share about your projects. It really helps others to piece together what the process looks like and how to see it through. It's motivating, and you guys are always offering one another so much encouragement and inspiration, and it's really great to share patterns. We actually have a bundles tab in the Ravelry group. I don't know if you guys realize, so when you go to the woolen spinning group on Ravelry, and I know there's accessibility issues with Ravelry, but if you go to the bundles tab, so for those who do use it, I just linked it in the live chat, that we have a bundle that's called Patterns Suited to Handspun. And if you click on that, you can add to it and add patterns that you find really work. And then in the Slack channel, for those who are part of that, we have a channel called Handspun Pattern Reflections. And if you especially for those who aren't on Ravelry, and please don't hesitate to cross post. Like if you put something in Ravelry and you know that there are people that can't access it there, definitely go across and post it in the Slack channel. But the Handspun Pattern Reflections is for people to be able to sort of say, like, this would be a really great pattern for handspun, this one not so much, and this is why. This one worked really beautifully, and you can throw them in there. So if you are on the Slack channel and you don't know that there's all these different channels, just go to the side. I'm going to show you really quickly actually so that you guys can see, because I've had a lot of questions about this recently. So let me just we're just going to do a little bit of housekeeping here for just a minute. This is my, let me zoom in for you guys. Okay, so this is mine. This is the Slack channel. So I'm on an Android, so it might look a little bit different on an iPhone. But if you click the over button, these are all of the channels. So if you want to add a channel, you just go to jump to, and you can search through everything. So if I want to look at the patterns reflections, I can click on that, and there's the that channel, and then from then on I'll see it. So these are all the different channels. There's tons and tons and tons more. And then if you scroll down, if you go past, you can see all of the different channels here. And the other way to get there is by clicking the plus button. So I'll show you guys that again, channels plus, and then you can scroll through and have a look. And there's tons and tons of different channels. You can join the ones that are pertinent to you. And you can, some of them are archived, like Tour de Fleece 2020. I'll be archiving that, and we'll start a new channel called Tour de Fleece 2021. So some of that stuff changes over time. And then if you keep scrolling down, you've got your direct messages down here. So I hope that that is helpful for those who aren't super familiar with how Slack works. Just keep asking questions. If you can't navigate your way around in the general channel, which is what defaults to what you see when you come onto the Slack channel, just ask, like, hey, how do I access blah, blah, blah? And people will tag you so that you join that place. So just keep asking. Great question, Ruth. What makes a pattern good or bad for hand spun when you're reviewing? So I think what people find with the biggest thing with like a pattern that's not quite, I shouldn't say bad, that's not as suited for hand spun are those patterns that have really, like this is just an example, that have really intricate color work where a braid of fiber with lots of color and lots of barber poling and lots of color changes or like self-striping or variegated or that would compete with that color work, that doesn't work very well. It's not that it wouldn't work with other hand spun, but I think when we're talking about patterns that do and don't work with hand spun, we're talking about patterns where do they tolerate a lot of color in the yarn and a lot of change in color? Because, you know, a lot of braids that are spun from comb top, from like those 4-ounce braids that we buy at like a festival or off of an Etsy shop, that have a ton of color. And, you know, a lot of what we talk about is how to manage that color in the spinning. Those braids don't necessarily translate into a knitted project. So if you guys are happy to go down a little rabbit hole for just a minute, I'll show you an example of yarn. So this is where, let me show you the yarn and we'll, where is it? I just have like a perfect example to share with you. Just give me a sec. Okay, so this yarn was my Kinfolk organic Polworth, okay? And you can see in the original braid, there was tons and tons of color, right? There was the red, the blue, the lime, there was some brown in there, there was some denim colored blue, there was teal, there was gorgeous greens, and then this is what the yarn looked like after I applied it. So this was a 2-ply with really long, slow transitions of color. And so when you've got that going on and when you've got that kind of situation, there's a lot of patterns that won't work because the color will compete with the knitting. And so something that's really, really super textured it's just not going to work. So what I ended up doing was finding a pattern that would highlight the yarn, but would also augment the colors. So this has like a very Christmassy feel. It's a little bit festive. And so I ended up using it in a yoke that enhanced that. And of course we got the Christmas baubles, and I used the jingle pattern by Isabel Kramer. So that's just an example, right? So that pattern worked really well in that situation. And then there's tons of other situations. But when we're talking about patterns that are suited to hand spun, that's generally what we're talking about is, you know, how do we manage these colors? I hope that's helpful. All right. I will see you guys next week. We have quite a busy week coming up for us in the community. We have the Wool Circle on Friday, which is our live stream for those who are part of that community. We have a Maker Morning coming up this Thursday for those who've signed up for that. That's part of the Patreon stuff. And we have our live stream next week at the same time, same place. And we also have queries and explorations afterwards who are part of that. So lots going on this week. I hope that you guys have just an awesome week and that you are knitting and spinning up a storm and maybe even weaving and crocheting and doing needlepoint and embroidery. And what else do we do, you guys? Macrame, what else do we do? I hope you have a great week and that it's full of joy. And I will see you guys next week. Happy spinning, happy knitting, happy dreaming. Bye, everyone.